This is CBC Winnipeg News.
Good evening. Thank you for joining us. Tonight, Brittany is away. First Nations in southern Manitoba are suing the provincial government and Manitoba Hydro. They argue that Lake Winnipeg is a living entity and deserves its own rights. The CBC's Mike Arsenault has the story.
The Southern Chiefs organization says it's speaking on behalf of Lake Winnipeg.
Moving forward, her voice becomes much louder than ours ever will.
The Southern Chiefs organization says it's speaking on behalf of Lake Winnipeg. The organization has launched a charter challenge to try to get Lake Winnipeg declared a living entity with all the rights that come with that.
We have a shared responsibility. Those who have came here, including us, have a shared responsibility that the lake is sustainable forever.
Manitoba Hydro regulates the flow of water in Lake Winnipeg, focusing on flood mitigation and hydropower. The lawsuit says that's had a dire impact on the health of the lake, wetlands, plant life, and animals.
Manitobans will be stunned to know that in almost 50 years of operations of Lake Winnipeg, Manitoba Hydro has never been required to conduct an environmental assessment to properly analyze the impact of its operations on the lake.
In a statement to CBC, a spokesperson for Manitoba Hydro said in part, Manitoba Hydro complies with all environmental and licensing requirements for all its projects. This isn't the first attempt to get personhood for a body of water in Canada. In 2021, the Magpie River in Quebec was granted legal rights, protecting it, its biodiversity, and even its right to take legal action. Even if Lake Winnipeg doesn't get designated a living entity, some say more needs to be done to protect it. A professor at the University of Winnipeg says a 2016 report recommended there be an environmental assessment of hydro's impact on the lake, but it was never done.
Manitoba Hydro is correct. They follow what they have to do. What they have to do is insufficient given the magnitude of the impact from my perspective.
Patricia Fitzpatrick says Hydro's regulations were written 50 years ago and need to be updated so they're in the best interest of the lake. CBC reached out to the province. They said they can't comment because the issue is before the courts. Mike Arsenault, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Orange Shirt Day is just over a week away, and many more Manitobans are now able to honor it in some way. This will be the first year the day to reflect upon the legacy of residential schools will be an official statutory holiday in this province. And as Arturo Chang reports, some businesses are still working out what that means.
Orange Shirt Day should be a statutory holiday so that every child in Manitoba can participate.
It became official just a year ago. All Manitobans can have September 30th off to reflect on the impact of the residential school system. Maybe wear orange to honor survivors like Phyllis Webstad, who had to hand over her now famous shirt her first day of school. It's a busy time at INAC, which sells Indigenous apparel, including orange shirts.
My mom is a residential school survivor, and so she used to come in and help pack and pick orders and ship them out, and it meant a lot to her to see people wearing an orange shirt or ordering orange shirts. It meant that if they're participating in the day.
Michelle Cameron already gave staff the day off before it became a stat holiday, but she says making it official means more people can participate. The new things take some time getting used to. The Winnipeg Chamber of Commerce says some businesses may still not be aware it's no longer optional.
Like any change in any type of employment standards code, there needs to be greater awareness campaign. The importance of the day isn't a day off. It's about a day to pause and reflect.
There generally was a gap in the content that was available for the general public.
The National Center for Truth and Reconciliation says more and more businesses are looking to learn about residential schools. It's expanded its Truth and Reconciliation Week programming beyond classrooms, now offering lunch and learns.
Do you have any of last year's design?
Cameron says she gets questions on how to honor the holiday all the time.
I always tell people to take a second or take a minute and reflect on what this day means to us as Indigenous people.
Winnipeg's annual Orange Shirt Day Healing Walk starts at 10, Monday morning at the Forks. Arturo Chang, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Well, to northern Manitoba now, where an extensive search is underway for a missing 6-year-old boy. Johnson Redhead went missing from the school in Shamattawa First Nation yesterday morning. They know he went to the breakfast program until 9 a.m., but didn't arrive for classes that morning. RCMP and people in Shamattawa have been scouring the area, looking through forests, roads, sheds, trails, and construction equipment. Mounties are looking at school footage as well to try and figure out where he went. Volunteer searchers from Winnipeg, RCMP Search and Rescue, and even the Canadian Rangers are being called in to help find the boy. A Winnipeg police officer with a history of misconduct allegations is facing more scrutiny after 3 men say they believe he is targeting their community. They say the officer, who is a patrol sergeant, was fixated on parking violations beside a downtown Ethiopian restaurant. The I-Team's Caroline Bargut reports.
When Befeqadu Abitao saw Winnipeg Police Patrol Sergeant Jeffrey Norman park his SUV outside Kokeb Restaurant on Edmonton Street this past February, he immediately grabbed his cell phone and started recording. Then he went outside and told Ayele Abea to move his car because he suspected what would happen next. Abitao says for months he believed Norman targeted the back lane next to the Ethiopian restaurant, ticketing people who illegally parked there.
He's always there, hunting purposely to find if someone is parking in the back lane.
But on this day, what should have been a simple parking ticket ended up with Abea and his friend Tamarat Sise getting arrested. Abea was driving for Uber that day when he says he had the urgent need to use the bathroom. So he parked his car in the back lane and ran into a nearby convenience store. When he came out, he saw Sise and stopped to say hi. But when he went back to his car, Norman approached and asked for his driver's license.
I said, "Hi, officer. Have I committed any crime?" And then I try and explain, but he wasn't willing to listen to my story. And he said, "I need to see your ID." And then I asked him, "Is this a crime scene? I don't see a police tape. I don't see a crime."
Sise and Abitao were mouthing off to Norman during the incident, and at one point, he asked them to move away.
Yeah, please, move over there. I have a right to continue. No, you do have a right, but you don't have the right to interfere.
We didn't interfere.
I am not interfering. Move over there.
I am not interfering.
Okay, move over there, please. Continue recording, but move over there.
The men didn't move. Norman called for backup. Then he arrested Abea for not handing over his license and came back to arrest Sise. Both were told they had obstructed a police officer. Norman also seized Abitao's phone for evidence. Abitao says the men weren't doing anything wrong and were just frustrated with what they feel is Norman targeting their community.
He just feels like he's very powerful in that uniform. He forgot that the responsibility that he carries with that uniform. I'm sure there are very good police officers who are doing their job to protect and make this community safe. By him, he has to stop.
Winnipeg police say the operator of the garbage truck flagged down Norman because they couldn't access the bin in the back lane, and that's why he was in the area. But the men say it doesn't explain the other times Norman stopped by to ticket food delivery drivers who also parked in the same spot.
I'm here in free country, supposed to be free country. I'm here. He's going to be personally attacking our community.
Norman has been sued 10 times dating back to 2005. The allegations ranging from assault and wrongful arrest to unnecessary use of a taser. Brandon Trask is an assistant professor at the Faculty of Law at the University of Manitoba, who used to be a Crown attorney in Nova Scotia. He says Winnipeg police need to do more to address concerns about Norman.
This in isolation, probably realistically wouldn't lead to anything, but this in tandem with all of the other allegations and all of the other legal actions involving Jeffrey Norman, I think at some point somebody at the Winnipeg Police Service has to stop and ask, is this who we want representing us as an agency, right? Is this somebody we want as a public face of our allegedly community building policing agency?
Abea and Sise were processed and detained. then released 4 hours later on a promise to appear in court. The Crown ended up not authorizing the charges, but the whole ordeal left them traumatized.
I was confused, to be honest with you. I did not know what was going on. Never in my life dreamed this will happen to me in Canada.
After 5 months, Abitaw finally got his phone back. He has since filed a complaint with the Law Enforcement Review Agency, but has no faith they'll do anything about Norman. Caroline Bargood, CBC News, Winnipeg.
If you have a tip for our I-Team, you can call our confidential tip line at 204-788-3744 or email iteam@cbc.ca. Well, just days after Mark Wasyliou was turfed from the NDP caucus after refusing to leave his law practice, another Manitoba MLA is planning to sell his side business after being caught breaking ethics rules. The CBC's Ian Fraze has the story.
Municipal Relations Minister Ian Bushy should have known better. That's the ruling from Manitoba's Ethics Commissioner. Bushy runs a gas station and convenience store on Hollow Water First Nation that had a contract with the provincial government to supply goods to wildfire crews. Now, the commissioner had no issue with this contract existing, but with Bushy being the MLA for Kiiwetinoong, he couldn't renew the contract. It happened anyways.
I take full responsibility for this mistake and this oversight. It was an error in judgment on my part, but I was wrong.
Bushy isn't just apologizing, he wants to convince Manitobans he's focused on them.
The commissioner did not require me to do this, but I have decided to sell my business, and I'm in the process of doing that as we speak. Being part of this team means being accountable. Selling my business shows my unequivocally commitment to my role on this team.
Some will draw parallels between Bushy's decision and what Mark Wasyliou refused to do. Wasyliou was turfed from caucus this week after a colleague at his law firm chose to represent convicted sex predator Peter Nygaard. Wasyliou was given the option of leaving his law practice, but he didn't. On Thursday, Bushy says he planned to sell his business well before Wasyliou's ouster.
I can't speak for Mr. Wasyliou, but for my perspective, this is something that I wanted to do to be able to show my commitment to our team as well.
Bushy said other MLAs with business interests can do what they want. St. River MLA Billy Cross told the same news conference she's proud to own a butcher shop, but it's her husband and daughter who run it. Ian Fraze, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Winnipeg police are looking for a black sedan they say is linked to a homicide last week. They say that car is connected to the death of 22-year-old Zayad Shamo. He was found dead in a home on Bristol Avenue last Friday. His death was ruled a homicide, and 2 people known to him are now in custody. Well, now police are asking you to be on the lookout for a black Honda Civic with Manitoba license plate LLN113. This is a stock image of that vehicle provided by police. Winnipeg police say if you see this vehicle, don't touch it and call authorities. Well, here's a sign of fall for you. Geese getting ready to fly south, and yes, those are leaves on the ground. Yes, we're entering fall later this week. Ethan Williams is here with the first check on our forecast.
Well, thanks, Riley. And we're starting in northwestern Ontario, where we have severe storms which are firing up as a result of a low pressure system that brought severe weather to Manitoba yesterday, moving into that part of the country. Now, tornado watches still in place here for storms that could form tornadoes even into the evening hours. Further back into Manitoba, it's a severe thunderstorm watch through portions of the northern Interlake and into the north as we continue to see storms there. And in the south of the province, these storms not as severe, but we're still seeing some popping up throughout the day today as they kind of cycle around that center of low pressure. But the good news is we're saying goodbye to the storms as we head into tomorrow. We'll start mostly cloudy by your commute tomorrow morning, but the clouds beginning to clear by the noon hour and then almost full sunshine by the afternoon. And those winds should be diminishing as well. But the sunshine not lasting for that long, Riley. I'll have a look at your full forecast, including some rain coming up.
All right. Thanks so much, Ethan. Still ahead for us tonight, the Canadian Medical Association has apologized officially to Indigenous and First Nations people for harms caused by the medical system. More on that apology and reaction from an Indigenous nurse from northern Manitoba coming up. Stay with us.
Oui. Oui.
Je veux juste vous dire, Patrice, que nous, on est peut-être 3 heures en décalage, mais la capitale de la Mongolie, on l'a crié avant tout le monde, on la connaissait. Alors, on est prêts à vous affronter et je pense qu'on va être possible. Je pense qu'on va bien s'en tirer. On est une chorale gospel ici qui va être nous ce soir, donc attachez-vous bien.
Certain, on va s'attacher. Merci. Merci, bonsoir à tout le monde. Je m'excuse d'avoir parlé de leur bâton. C'est de la culture sur la confiture, hein. On est dans l'autre petit détail. Alors, on salue les gens qui nous écoutent également via YouTube, partout. C'est diffusé dans tous les événements, dans les stations régionales, mais je participe. Et il y a également des gens chez eux qui vont nous écouter, qui vont participer via YouTube. Alors, une dernière fois, on regarde ensemble les 10 régions qui festoient et qui sont convaincus de vont gagner ce soir. On va les voir à l'écran, à l'instant, les 10 régions. Ça va être comme une espèce de... Ouais, c'est comme... Allez! C'est comme un souvenir de pandémie. C'est pas vous autres, mais... Voir tout le monde comme ça. Alors, le quiz va se faire via une plateforme de jeu. Alors, pour les gens qui sont dans des événements, il y a du Wi-Fi disponible dans chaque salle. On aimerait savoir beaucoup dans quelle ville vous êtes. Alors, quand vous vous inscrivez, ajoutez le nom de votre ville avant votre pseudo. Alors, si vous êtes participé, si vous faites le CD-là, peut-être si vous êtes chez vous à la maison, vous pouvez mettre le nom de la ville au complet avant votre pseudo. On veut savoir d'où vous venez parce qu'on veut savoir où sont les gens qui performent le mieux. Alors, si vous êtes à la maison, donc, vous pouvez vous connecter au quiz. Et même ici, selon le code couvert qui est disponible à l'écran. Et sinon, vous pouvez vous connecter à l'adresse crowd.live/RC 2024. Le nom de l'adresse à l'écran. Ensuite, c'est très simple, vous allez voir les questions apparaître sur le téléphone. Si vous êtes sur YouTube, il va y avoir un petit délai. On commence à suivre depuis le début de la soirée. Mais sur le téléphone, vous allez recevoir des questions en même temps que tout le monde. Et quand il est temps de voter, vous avez 30 secondes pour voter. C'est important de voter rapidement parce que vous faites plus de points si vous votez plus rapidement. Et donc, on vous donne à peu près 5 minutes que tout le monde puisse se connecter à la plateforme de jeu. Et ensuite, on vous revient. Ça sera vraiment pas long. Dès qu'on sent que tout le monde est connecté, on commence le jeu. Alors, branchez-vous.
The Canadian Medical Association has formally apologized to Indigenous peoples. The doctors group held a special ceremony in Victoria on Wednesday to acknowledge a long history of racist practices and maltreatment. We'll get reaction from a registered nurse from Mosakaken Cree Nation here in Manitoba just ahead. But first, the CBC's Yvette Brend has the details on the apology.
A tribute to all those who paid a price in a healthcare system tainted by racism.
The Canadian Medical Association is deeply sorry for the harms First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples have experienced and continue to experience in the Canadian health system.
Dr. Alika Lafontaine was the Canadian Medical Association's first Indigenous president. He says he's witnessed how the system treats Indigenous people differently.
One of my earliest memories of going onto a clinical rotation after being in the classroom for a couple of years was seeing two patients walk in right after each other, have the same set of symptoms, but one was asked to sleep off their drunkenness while the other one had full workup for a heart attack and a stroke.
The CMA's apology fulfills a call to action by Canada's Truth and Reconciliation Commission. The association searched more than 150 years of archives to own up to its past, while acknowledging the problem persists today. As documented by a damning 2020 report on the BC healthcare system, and the story of Joyce Echaquan, who live-streamed the verbal abuse of hospital workers as she lay dying nearly 4 years ago. Racist healthcare also evident in forced sterilizations and segregated hospitals.
I'm hopeful that doctors will start to see Indigenous people as human beings and go past just as a client that walks into their office.
Joyce
Echaquan's cousin says people have lost trust. She says an apology is hard to accept. The CMA promises it's just a first step. Yvette Brand, CBC News, Victoria.
Well, let's stay on this story now. Tina Campbell says this apology is a step in the right direction. Campbell is a registered nurse from Mosakaken Cree Nation, also known as Moose Lake. She now lives in Saskatchewan. She spoke this morning with Information Radio host Marcy Marcusa.
I was a university student, so I lived in Iqaluit, Nunavut, and I was a student actually in Saskatchewan. And, you know, accessing care, I'm visibly Indigenous, and I feel like sometimes I do experience discrimination up front. I've experienced it my whole life now that I've come to learn what discrimination is. And I had actually shared an experience last year with CBC about, you know, I had gone for a simple medical procedure, but in the back of my mind, I'm always thinking, okay, I must look presentable. I must look, you know, like I know kind of what I'm doing, I guess, just because I wanted to be treated in a way that I get the best care possible, which is unfortunate. But it's because of that experience when I was younger that kind of still follows with me today. And, you know, when you think about that personal experience of mine and how it still continues to affect me, I'm in my 30s now. You really understand how experiences from family members previous to us, those feelings about healthcare and that mistrust can be passed down through generations. So.
I'm not going to say it as well as you did, but you said you know what it was now. You know, you can name it as discrimination now upon reflection. But in that moment when you're 17 and you went in the office and somehow you felt that they weren't seeing you as someone who, you know, they weren't seeing you. They weren't hearing you. Did you feel dismissed, I understand, in that moment?
I view it as if somebody's coming to a healthcare professional, to a clinic, they want help. They're there because they don't know what to do, and you know, people are at their most vulnerable when they're not feeling well. So it's really important to welcome everybody with that compassion and understanding and equality. People are scared as well when they don't understand what's going on with them. So it really is the approach, and it goes from, you know, there's all these views and it's because of all the stuff that's happened in the past, all the, you know, institutions and the views that the government had placed in these policies as well, that are very racist and discriminatory, unfortunately. And as a healthcare provider, that's a big reason why I came into healthcare, was because I wanted to be a safer place for Indigenous peoples when they're accessing care, to see me and, you know, hey, I'm one of you, and hopefully, you know, working with my non-Indigenous colleagues and educating them on why things might be a certain way.
What is still left to be that you would still like to hear, even though you said you appreciated the apology? And you know, were able to take it all in yesterday. Where do we go from here now?
Well, as we know, in 2015, we had the Truth and Reconciliation released the 94 calls to action. And from 18 to 24, those are specific to health, and specifically Call 24, and that, just states that medical professionals, educational facilities teach the history and the historical treatment of of Indigenous people within the healthcare system and education systems, and so that people are aware and can tailor their care and have understanding and compassion for the populations that they're serving. Another huge reason why I became a nurse as well, and specifically in tuberculosis, was my grandmother and my aunt were sent to TB sanatoriums in Fort Capel in the 50s, and learning about their experiences as well, and how that kind of affected their trust in systems as well. And people say historical, and I try to use that term lightly because my aunt is still alive today. So that I don't really consider that historical if these survivors are still, walking and breathing and carrying these experiences.
A bit of an up and down day weather-wise today, with some sun this afternoon, a bit of rain as well through the afternoon hours, and wind. Ethan's back with a full look at our forecast.
Well, thanks, Riley. And temperatures today, a little bit all over the place, still holding back a little bit where we've seen some showers and storms in western parts of the province into the teens, but into the sunshine today, and especially into northwestern Ontario where we're seeing those storms fire up. We've definitely had temperatures jump into the 20s, and feeling even a little bit humid at times with that excess moisture. Now, this whole system going to continue to move through parts of northwestern Ontario tonight before conditions will start to settle down. This low pressure system that is causing all of this unsettled weather, not just today, but the last couple of days here, begins to move into northern Manitoba, and the story there will be some rain that could be heavy at times overnight tonight and even through the day tomorrow. Southern Manitoba, including Winnipeg and the Red River Valley, will enjoy a nice sunny day mostly tomorrow. But then as we get into the weekend, our next little area of low pressure begins moving through. And by Saturday afternoon, we're looking at showers through much of the south before that moves out. And then we get a little more substantial break in the action as we head into Sunday and for the rest of the weekend. For northern Manitoba, amounts here could be in the range of maybe 20 to 30 millimeters. A few thunderstorms could bring amounts a little bit higher than that at times. Through the south, we're not looking at a whole lot even as that next system moves through on Saturday, maybe 5 to 15 millimeters, again, depending if we see a few heavier amounts pop up here and there. The one thing we are going to watch, though, is a little bit of some wind picking up as we get overnight tonight into the Winnipeg area. That should be dying down, though, through the day tomorrow. Maybe a little bit breezy at times here and there, but nothing too severe. It'll be northern Manitoba where we will see winds, especially along the Hudson Bay coast, picking up maybe close to 60 at times. So a little bit windy in that part of the province. But tomorrow, as I say, a nice day in Winnipeg once the clouds clear through the morning, looking for a high of 21. Again, chance of showers as we get into Saturday, especially into the afternoon hours, I think is when we're going to see that. Temperatures dropping down to the single digits overnight, but that's about normal for this time of year before we get into some nice sunny conditions. Once again on Sunday, some more substantial clearing. 18 degrees is just about where we should be for this time of year. I'll have a look at your full provincial forecast for what's coming up tonight and into tomorrow coming up.
All right, thanks, Ethan. Looking forward to a little bit more sunshine. Still to come, Lebanon is on high alert after pagers and walkie-talkies used by militant group Hezbollah exploded almost simultaneously as airstrikes continue. The latest on this story straight ahead.
Pour la première question, on a un invité surprise qui va me rejoindre ici. Oui, il anime, tu peux rentrer, tout le monde t'a vu. Il anime l'émission de Racine Country sur ici musique. L'auteur, compositeur, interprète extraordinaire Jean-François Brault, mesdames et messieurs.
Salut Patrice, salut tout le monde, partout au Canada, ça me fait plaisir de jouer avec toi.
Alors, une bête de scène. C'est un gars sur scène. Et elle a écrit aussi. On a eu la chance de faire la télévision ensemble.
S'amuser ensemble avec une de famille.
Oui, c'est ça, oui.
Pour saluer les familles et de les voir aller. C'était le fun au bout.
C'était très fun, oui.
Oui.
Content que tu sois là.
Moi aussi.
Je t'aime beaucoup. Je suis un gars. Bon. OK, alors tu vas poser la prochaine question.
Oui.
Oui, est-ce que tu veux le carton, tu vas y aller avec...
À l'écran...
C'est toujours bon de dos à la télévision.
Oui, c'est toujours ça. Oui, ben, je vais prendre le carton.
Non, vas-y.
Oui, OK, je vais y aller. À l'appareil là, laquelle de ces célébrités américaines aurait des racines acadiennes? Est-ce que c'est Taylor Swift, Beyoncé ou Lady Gaga? Les trois me surprennent.
Des racines, oui, des racines.
Des racines acadiennes.
Est-ce que tu connais la réponse?
Très bien.
Est-ce que tu le savais avant?
Oui.
Tu le savais, OK. On ne dit pas c'est qui, on ne donne pas d'indice.
On t'a dit pourquoi je le savais.
OK, on me dit pourquoi tu le savais après ça. Alors, il reste 9 secondes. Est-ce que c'est Taylor Swift, Beyoncé ou Lady Gaga qui auraient des racines acadiennes? Et il ne reste qu'une seconde. Alors, la bonne réponse, c'était...
Beyoncé.
Beyoncé.
Oui, effectivement.
Combien de gens ont eu la bonne réponse? Oh!
27%.
Seulement 27%.
C'est Lady Gaga est acadienne.
Oui.
Mais Beyoncé est de sa mère la 6e arrière-petite-fille du héros acadien Beau Soleil Broussard, Joseph Broussard.
Oui.
Il y a eu 8 fils et 3 filles. Elle est descendante d'un de ces enfants-là. Dans la gang, si tu descends l'arbre généalogique, tu trouves Jean-François Brault.
Non.
Je te jure.
C'est ta cousine.
Beyoncé puis moi, on est sur la veille d'aller au même party de Noël.
Ça veut dire qu'il y a des anciens en Acadie qui n'avaient pas l'âme qui bougeant se faire aller.
Oui.
Ben oui, c'était une de ses arrière-grand-mères, ça se nommait Odilia Broussard. Odilia, c'est un mot là. Odilia Broussard.
Voilà, fait que oui, moi, depuis quelques années maintenant, je sais que j'ai de la parenté avec elle. Elle m'a toujours pas appelé pour m'inviter.
Qui t'a dit ça, que tu étais parent avec elle?
Il y avait une production télé au Nouveau-Brunswick qui voulait m'apporter dans un projet de Beau Soleil Broussard. Puis ils m'ont dit, on a fait l'arbre généalogique de Beau Soleil, puis tu te trouves à être dans un de...
À cause d'autres, il y a un concept sur Beau Soleil Broussard.
Oui.
Ils se sont dit, on va parler de Beyoncé avant Rosaveau, il va venir.
Il va venir. Ça n'a pas marché.
On va acheter pas
faire d'autres choses.
Ah. Je vous ai dit qu'il était fin. Hey, merci beaucoup. Jean-François Brault.
Ça fait plaisir. Il faut retenir Jean-François Beyoncé pour vous inviter.
Oui, merci. De dos, on peut les confondre facilement. Beyoncé et Jean-François. OK, maintenant. Alors, une autre question. Attention, qui a animé les chefs et a joué dans les séries C'est comme ça que je t'aime et Virginie? Les trois donc. Qui a animé les chefs, a joué dans les séries C'est comme ça que je t'aime et Virginie? Est-ce que c'est Élise Marquis, Chantal Fontaine ou Guylaine Tremblay? Hey, vous avez pas d'autres copies, j'en s'en parle entre les autres. Je suis mal à l'aise pour vous autres, une chance qu'on ne vous voit pas. Donc, Élise Marquis, Chantal Fontaine ou Guylaine Tremblay a joué dans les séries C'est comme ça que je t'aime et Virginie et animé les chefs. La bonne réponse était Chantal Fontaine. Et voilà.
Overseas tonight, the leader of Hezbollah says Israel has crossed a red line after pagers and walkie-talkies used by the militant group exploded almost simultaneously in Lebanon. It comes as both sides launch fresh attacks across the border. Chris Brown has the latest from London.
Lebanon is rattled and panicked after experiencing the horror of everyday electronic devices suddenly becoming bombs. Police were taking no chances, carrying out controlled explosions on anything suspicious looking. Of course we're scared, said Mustafa Sabai. Who can feel safe in this situation? Who can feel secure about their phone now? The toll of injured is now above 3,600, with Lebanese health authorities confirming 25 were killed in Wednesday's radio handset explosions, with 12 dead a day earlier from pagers. This trauma doctor said she's never encountered injuries like the ones she's been treating.
They had puncture wounds on their faces, they had amputated limbs, they had open abdomens, intestines out, bowels out.
Israel's government has not admitted it was behind what appears to be an unprecedented tampering operation, but most people in Lebanon are behaving like it was. Hezbollah's chief, Hassan Nasrallah, accused what he called the Zionist entity of violating every international law and red line. As he spoke, Israeli fighter jets flew low over Beirut and struck at targets in southern Lebanon. Hezbollah's attacks on northern Israel have driven tens of thousands of Israelis from their homes. But Nasrallah vowed the militia, which Canada considers to be a terrorist group, will not stop its strikes as they're in solidarity with Palestinians in Gaza. How Israel intends to capitalize on the chaos is also uncertain, even as the defense minister intensified his threats of further military action in what he called a new phase of the war. Some in Israel, though, are dismayed with that shift.
We don't care about Hezbollah. War must be ended.
Hostage families say getting their family members home should remain the priority, not Hezbollah. Chris Brown, CBC News, London.
A world-famous photo of Winston Churchill by Yusuf Karsh has been returned to officials at the Canadian Embassy in Rome. Nicknamed the Roaring Lion, it was stolen 2 years ago from the Chateau Laurier in Ottawa. Paul Hunter has more on its recovery and repatriation.
And now is the moment I think we've all been waiting for a very long time.
And with that, at a ceremony inside the Canadian Embassy in Rome, up went the curtain, and there it was. A Canadian treasure, a historic, freshly recovered Yusuf Karsh photo of the British Prime Minister Winston Churchill. The Roaring Lion, as it's known, stolen from the walls of the Fairmont Chateau Laurier Hotel in Ottawa nearly 3 years ago, replaced by the thief with a fake, and missing until police found it here in Italy. Now, the official signed handover from Italian authorities back to Canada. What's going through your mind?
I'm still having a hard time. It's the real one. It's exciting.
I've never known you to be speechless.
It's just, I still having a hard time to believe we're actually here in Rome, and this is our portrait, and we're going to bring it back.
Among those in the crowd, Nicola Casanelli, an Italian who'd unwittingly bought the photo at an online auction long before police even knew it had been stolen. When he learned the truth, Casanelli gave it up to Italian police.
I'm happy that even if I enjoyed it privately for nearly 2 years in my living room now, visitors from all over the world will have the same opportunity in Ottawa, not in my home, but it's nice that it could happen again.
This is the day that we've been working so hard to get to.
That's it. Ottawa police cracked the case with forensic clues, tips from the Karsh estate, and other evidence still not public. An Ontario man now faces multiple charges. Did you ever think you'd see this day?
I felt like we were. It was just going to take a long time. You know, I hope for one of two conclusions, either to charge the subject or recover the portrait. Sometimes we don't get to do both. And in this case, we have been able to, so I'm very happy.
The photo itself is now headed home, expected back up on the walls at the chateau sometime next month. What a journey. Paul Hunter, CBC News, Rome.
An Ontario family is at the center of a medical breakthrough. This after 2 members died unexpectedly from sudden cardiac arrest. Now researchers have identified a cause that explains some cardiac arrests. Mike Crawley has the details.
So this is my sister, Jennifer.
For decades, a health mystery surrounded Lauren Fillion's life and her siblings' deaths. Her sister died of a sudden cardiac arrest at 18.
She had just finished high school.
Her brother Peter collapsed and died at 34.
Newly married, just starting a family.
And Fillion herself survived cardiac arrest in her early 30s.
Out of the blue, I was in an aerobics class at the time.
Despite extensive cardiac testing on her and her family and DNA analysis, no one could pinpoint a cause.
We had no answers for them, and we had no idea whether or not we'd wake up the next day and we'd hear that a brother or sister had had a similarly tragic fate.
Sudden cardiac arrest is triggered by problems with the heart's electrical system.
These red arteries here.
It's different from a heart attack, which stems from damage to heart muscle.
In a sudden cardiac arrest, you're looking at, on average, 1 in 10 patients surviving. So it's pretty dismal.
I know, here we go.
It took years and an international search for similar cases to find out what was happening to Fillion and her siblings.
Come on.
The Canadian researchers who discovered it call it calcium release deficiency syndrome, triggered by a variation in one gene known as RYR2.
There was a lot of relief that now we had answers.
The team's latest achievement? They figured out how to detect the syndrome on an ECG.
So you see how different it is?
The researchers hope this becomes part of the standard arsenal of cardiac tests when trying to find out who might be at risk and whose life could be saved by having a defibrillator implanted.
Now I'm so gratified and so thrilled that the first test was working in human.
It's kind of bittersweet. Obviously I'm ecstatic that, somebody else isn't going to lose a brother, sister, mom or dad, or a child. Obviously it hurts that it came at the cost of, my brother and sister. Rusty, come.
Fillion's children and her 2 surviving brothers have all been tested. None of them have the syndrome. Mike Crawley, CBC News, Ilderton, Ontario.
Still to come, should Winnipeg have designated areas for houseless encampments? We ask that question to Mayor Scott Gillingham. More on that conversation coming up after the break. As we showed you yesterday here on CBC Winnipeg News, the City of Hamilton, Ontario has some new encampment protocols, rules that people who live in encampments have to follow. Things like how many tents can be in one place and how close they can be to places like schools or historic sites. That has sparked conversation in Winnipeg about the idea of sanctioned encampments with similar rules. Mayor Scott Gillingham addressed calls for those types of sanctions on Information Radio this morning.
We want to end homelessness, not just manage it. And so I would rather us be putting our efforts into getting more housing built and getting people into housing with wraparound supports. We're focused on that rather than be looking at moving to sanctioned encampments. I'm not in favor of that at this point. I've been to other cities where there have been sanctioned encampments, and individuals, rightly and fairly so, have a freedom of movement and don't stay in those encampments, even though there's a sanctioned area. And so I respect, and this individual who the clip of which you played has lived experience, so I'm not going to certainly argue with their lived experience. I respect that. But it's a complex matter. Everybody knows it's a complex matter. Our focus is housing first, get the housing built with the wraparound supports. And so at this point, our focus is getting people out of encampments and into housing.
In the meantime, though, could garbage pickup happen now, for example? Some of the services and things that would provide dignity or portable washrooms, which is actually, a human right. Emily Brass did a whole report for us on CBC last week talking about, actually the right to what a houseless person's right would be to, right to a washroom. Could we look in Winnipeg at having more of those services around the encampments that do exist?
Well, for sure, you raised garbage pickup. That has been a topic of conversation for quite a while at City Hall. We've taken some action on that. In fact, the City of Winnipeg has been partnering with some of the frontline agencies who are providing some of that regular garbage pickup, and doing so in a manner that is in collaboration with the people living in the encampments.
I respect that the ultimate goal is affordable housing, but in the meantime, we have people living in the encampments for various reasons. What protocols are in place already or could be strengthened? We heard from Hamilton yesterday that because of fire hazard, that one of the protocols was no, overhang of a tarp attached to a structure. We also heard that in Hamilton, some people like this, some people didn't, but what they have there is a limit on 5 tents per encampment. Some people said they lost community and didn't have enough strength in numbers. Other people said that was more manageable in terms of feeling safe because it was a smaller community. What are your thoughts on specific protocols for encampments in Winnipeg?
We do have a set of, I would say, an agreed upon set of, we call it protocols, or we call it a process map for encampments. First of all, and I commend again the frontline agencies who have relationship with individuals living in encampments and are trying to make sure that their needs are being met and they're getting them out of encampments into housing where possible. Where there's a requirement for emergency services to come in, to make, as you indicate, to make sure that there's not fire safety issues, or where paramedics are needed, or where there may be criminal activity, emergency service personnel need to be able to go in there. That's part of our process that we agree upon already. We, being the City of Winnipeg and all the frontline agencies, that's been well established. Too often, Marcy, the most vulnerable people in our community are the ones who are often the most victimized by crime and whose lives can be at risk. And sometimes, many times, those individuals are people living in encampments. So we have to make sure that our emergency service personnel can go in and do their work to help and assist the people that need that assistance. And they need to be able to go into encampments and do that work.
Another bit of a stormy day in the province today. Some storms moving through parts of Westman and some rain in the north. Ethan is back with our Manitoba forecast.
Well, I want to thank Kevin for sending in a couple of great shots from the other night. The nice sunset out at Steep Rock, and the moon as well, that gorgeous full supermoon that we saw the other night, and the eclipse as well, the partial eclipse that happened. Some nice days out there at Steep Rock, and I think as we head into tomorrow, we're expecting a nice day for there and for a lot of southern Manitoba, at least. For tonight, though, there is still the lingering chance of some showers for many of us tonight, as we see temperatures generally in that 10 to 15 degree range. May still be a few thunderstorms kind of here and there as well. Severe weather should begin to drop off for northwestern Ontario. For northern Manitoba, the story here, of course, is going to be the rain, starting to move in overnight tonight with a few thunderstorms here and there. That's going to keep temperatures fairly warm overnight for this time of year. there. But as you can see, by the morning hours, that band of rain has already begun to nicely move in, and it'll be a washout of a day for many of these locations here. And again, a few thunderstorms could produce locally heavier amounts than the 20 to 30 millimeters that we're looking at. That begins to move a little bit further northward toward the Hudson Bay coast by the later afternoon hours tomorrow. But for southern Manitoba, look at this. Nice clearing, sunny skies for southwestern sections as we start the day tomorrow. Still a little bit of some cloud cover lingering for Winnipeg and eastern sections, but then that clears away nicely into the afternoon. We see temperatures getting near 20 by the noon hour and into the low 20s by the later afternoon. Maybe a few pockets of rain, a few sprinkles here and there, and a couple of thunderstorms, but otherwise still looking at a pretty nice day. And it's going to be a great day for the sunflowers and for Mickey to get out for a walk. Thanks to Sandra for sending in that great shot. And a reminder that you can always send in your dog photos to talkback@cbc.ca. In terms of Winnipeg, again, a little bit of cloud cover still lingering by the morning hours. By noon, though, look at that, full sunshine, and we're looking to get into the 20s a little bit into the afternoon. I think it'll be a fairly dry day as well. And again, as we get into Saturday, we'll be looking at a little more unsettled conditions. So tomorrow will be the day to get out and enjoy this Friday, last Friday, before we hit fall, Riley. And I will have a look at your full forecast that tells us what we're going to look at for the start to fall coming up.
All righty. Thank you so much, Ethan. Coming up after the break, the latest data shows Canadians lost, get this, $570 million to fraud last year. After the break, how the Canada Revenue Agency is finding creative ways to educate people about potential scams. We're back right after this.
information, let's get to know each other a little better. CBC's Communities in Focus is coming to your community September 23rd to 27th. Visit cbc.ca/Manitoba for details.
The latest data shows nearly 42,000 Canadians lost about $570 million to fraud last year. And the amount of money lost to phone, text, and online scams is continuing to rise. As Rhythm Rati reports, the Canada Revenue Agency has created a hands-on activity to help people spot the fraudsters.
Scams are everywhere these days, and the Canada Revenue Agency is trying a creative approach to raise awareness and combat scammers. They have brought this escape room to Champlain Place in an attempt to help Canadians recognize common scams that are pretending to come through the Government of Canada.
Most people are really good at learning by doing something. So you might read the information on our website, but by actually going through and being put in like real life scenarios, you're gonna remember that experience a lot more and hopefully take something away from it.
The idea is to have participants go through this immersive experience to find out if you have been scammed and get scored on their result. Let's see how many scams I fall victim to. Okay. Scam, yes, no. Scam, yes, no, yes. Scam, okay.
Oh, this is your result.
Oh no.
So basically you have some issue with the text message and mainly the emails. The emails are really tricky. It's not easy to really figure out which one is the right one and which one is not. The thing is that with Revenue Canada, they will never ask your personal information or to click on any kind of links.
Okay, I'll admit, some of these scams are easy to fall for. And as we know, over time, they get more sophisticated. In the meantime, the Canada Revenue Agency wants to remind you to use caution before you give your personal details to the government or your bank over phone, text, or email.
It's very good advice. That is from the CBC's Rhythm Rati in Moncton, New Brunswick.
Well, again, a beautiful Friday in store for us in Winnipeg with the chance of showers building back in for Saturday. Sunday looking like a nice day as we hit just about normal for this time of year. And then look at that, as we begin the season of fall officially, which starts early Sunday morning, we are actually looking at temperatures looking a little bit more like the beginning of spring or even into summer as we jump back into the 20s with overnight lows potentially getting into double-digit territory. Looks like we're seeing more settled conditions, not a whole lot of rain in store and wind for the start of next week. And so we will enjoy those above seasonal temperatures and hopefully let us dry out a bit, Riley, from the wet week that we've had.
Yeah, I'll certainly be enjoying that sunshine. Thanks, Ethan. A special celebration was held at the West Park Manor Personal Care Home today. The lives of not 1, 2, but 6 centenarians were honored as families came out to share memories, and one centenarian shared some wisdom. Their celebration is our daily lift.
I just want to honor each of our residents that are 100 or over at this point in time in 2024.
Celebrate and honor on that achievement with you today.
What a remarkable feat making it to 108 years old.
Right. That's a certificate of your birthday achievement.
A certificate for you. Why a certificate?
Because you're 102. Congratulations, a certificate from the Member of Parliament, Marty Morantz, on your achieved 100th birthday, and from our Mayor, Popular Mayor. Congratulations.
What's the secret to being 101 years old?
To be honest and good, live well, and I don't know. Do the best you can, and whatever you're trying.
We
thought we would celebrate our centenarians that we have at our facility. Now we have 6 centenarians, our eldest one being 108. You know, just the remarkable lives that they had needed to be honored.
Happy birthday, everybody. Happy birthday to you and many.
108 years old. Wow. And I know our videographer, Jeff Stapleton, who was out there today, was so delighted to meet you all. Thank you for being with us. Have a great evening.